Hi, this is Pete Gooding from Ibiza, musical director at Hostel La Torre, and you are listening to the Liverpool Connection Podcast.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Liverpool Connection Podcast. This is my football and music one-on-one. I am Daz. If you're just tuning in for the first time, my guest today, I've known about him for a very, very long time. As everyone knows, I'm into my music, my clobber, my trainers, my football. He is the first Man United supporter I have had in 4 years. He might be the last after this. We'll see how it goes. But he's a DJ, he's an author, he's got a book out called Discotheque Archives. Please go check it out. I'll put a link in the description when this episode goes out. And also he has a great thing called Credit to the Edit, which we will talk about. But I'm very happy to welcome Greg Wilson to the pod.
Hi, good to be here, even though you're a fan.
Yeah, well, same. Even though you're a United fan, you know, we can't always be, you know, the best of the best. But we, you know, obviously,
but we need each other. If we didn't have each other, that's the whole thing. It's like we're opposite sides of the same coin in a sense. You know, it's like one without the other. We need that. You know, I mean, it matters how, you know, like some people would look at. You know, like we're not doing very well at the minute and everything, but we're looking at Liverpool and they've had a great team over recent years. But as a United fan, you don't want them to win, you know, of course. I mean, and but I've been in a quandary this year because the whole City thing, because obviously they're going for the fourth. They've equaled the treble last year, so they've got that out of the way. They hold the points records. They're just blowing all the records out the water. And now they might do something that's never happened in the history of football, win the title 4 years on the run. So there was a lot within me that kind of, you know, it conflicted really badly because, you know, I don't think it's good for football that a team's so dominant. And I think the fact that Liverpool got that title in between, I think they would have won, what, 6 or 7 on the bounce, you know. We're now getting to the domination of Bayern Munich's and the way the Italian leagues have gone at certain times. And we never had that. And that was great for the competitiveness of it because you never knew, you know, whereas now, you know, we've got a cup final, but United fans, I don't think any United fans is thinking we're going to win it. That's crazy. Even if you're an underdog going in, you know, but something's changed about the game now that, you know, perhaps taken it into it has taken it into a different level completely. And Liverpool were able, you know, to kind of compete within that, which is remarkable. But even so, it was only competing most of the time because City just hoover up all the titles, because if they have players out, they can bring in equal players. They've got 2 squads, you know, they've got 2 great teams almost in there. If you took away the first 11, the next team would probably qualify for Europe, you know. So you're dealing with those aspects, and yet United's been such a shitstorm over the last 10 years. Just like everything that they could have done wrong, they've probably done wrong. Whereas Liverpool's the opposite. They've probably done everything they could do right. They've done right since the Klopp era began and everything. But you know,
it's small margins, isn't it? Like, I mean, for, you know, obviously Klopp's leaving in a couple of weeks. And, you know, you've got opposing fans going, you know, how can you call him a legend when he's only won one Premier League? Well, you know, you're up against a Man City that are a machine. You just are. I mean, the close margins twice a point, you know. A couple of seasons ago, took them to the last match of the season, you know, when Villa were beating them 2-0. And, you know, I was at the pub and I was like, is this it? Is this going to happen? And then once Man City got that first goal, I was like, they're going to beat them, aren't they? And it just ruined my, like, when I'm 16, you know, if Liverpool like lost or anything, I'd throw the telly out the window kind of thing. Now I'm a lot older. It ruins my maybe afternoon, and I get on with life. I've got 4 little girls that take much of my time, so it kind of like makes me focus on something else. But still, it's just this juggernaut of Man City, and I'm kind of conflicted because Arsenal are pushing them and doing really well. They're playing some fantastic football. But I'm like, would it be just easier for City just to win it this fourth time? Because really nobody cares if City wins it. They really don't. I mean, because those 115 charges are still looming, and then, you've got the Arsenal lads that you're just like, I don't want them to win it. Just because they'll have that for the whole season of just like we won the league, and it's like and I'm sure this is kind of the same for you, Greg. It's just
I'd be happy for Arsenal to win it. I'm more than happy. I mean, I'm an Arsenal fan in terms of this title run-in. I just don't think they will. Just don't think they will. That's the basic. I mean, they've got like. They got over that Spurs hurdle really well. I mean, they're going to play us, and you can bet your bottom dollar that we'll turn up that day. It's be typical that we'll kind of. I don't know. I mean, they should beat us because we're so beatable. I think they've got Brighton away as well, maybe. Which is, but then who had Brighton away recently, and was it?
I think Arsenal beats Brighton.
Arsenal already played Brighton away. Yeah, they got a great result there. So yeah, they suggest that that they can, but I just don't believe that they will. Mm-hmm. Whereas I don't see City dropping those points anywhere. I just you think Arsenal got to be perfect, and City have got to draw, and that will be because I think then. Arsenal have the goal difference. But I mean, I must say that I thought it was really, really odd with Liverpool how it's all gone in recent weeks. And you go back to the cup tie with United, which was a crazy game, the 4-3, and then we got that breakaway right at the end. And obviously that's going to hurt, and I get that. But go into the league match, the 2-2, because I remember that. And I remember all, my mates, most of my mates are Liverpool fans because I'm from Merseyside myself. And I just felt the despondency. And I'm looking at the league table and going, you're equal points with Arsenal. They've got a better goal difference. You're a point ahead of City. It's still in your own hands. But the feeling I got back from everywhere, and even I think Virgil van Dijk did an interview afterwards, and really he kind of should have said, I think he should have been saying something to the effect of, we should have won that match, but that point might come in. That might be the most important thing. Because really, you're playing Man United, your traditional rivals. Of course, we've been rubbish the last few years. You've battered us here and there. But you're still playing us, and to get a point at our ground is not a bad result. It's not a bad result. Yet everybody was acting like it was this huge defeat.
Well, I think it was more of a hang-up than losing the FA Cup tie, the way we did it, because, we were battering you, and we should have put that, that goal to bed.
Absolutely.
The chances that we had, Nunes, he's such, like, I call him Captain Chaos. Mm-hmm. He makes the chances, which is good, because if he wasn't, at least making those chances, I'd be even more pissed off at him. But it's like when he has time to think, that's when he messes it up. Like, pretty easy. And instead of just like placing the ball, he whacks it as hard as he can. And I just think, and I thought just putting everybody up on that corner when you did the break, madness. It was just absolute madness. I'm like, we're what, 30 seconds away from extra time, or was penalties, right? For penalties. And I was like, why are you putting everyone up? Just go for penalties. It's a lottery then, and I think that was the start of our decline. I just think the lads' mentality just kind of, heads were down, and it kind of carried on. I mean, yeah, we beat Fulham. But Fulham weren't that very good. And then, we played Hughes lot. But, and like you said, though, on paper, Liverpool should be beating United. But when we play United, United show up,
Yeah.
Usually, I mean, not like
Few
last
times.
season, yeah, where I don't even think you got off the coach. It was so bad. Like, I've never seen a United team that
Never
bad.
happened like that. All the the many I've been watching United since the late '60s. So all that time, there's never been anything. I think Liverpool we might have beat you 4-1 or 4-0 at one point when I think you had somebody sent off. But that was as far as it went. So, you beat us 5-0 at Old Trafford, you beat us 7-0. I mean, these are, wounding results. And it's going to, I don't know, how do you ever kind of revenge those things? I mean, does it happen? But I mean, I just think that 7-0 was a crazy match because most of the goals were scored in the second half. United were looking decent until like you scored before half time, so it was just, that's typical of the team and the way that we've been. I mean, I remember like even when Fergie was still there and that match against City where we lost 6-1 at home. And I remember that season starting and it looked like we were going to, this is going to be the third team. This is going to be the next. We had like Anderson, Phil Jones. We had a lot of young, but even people like Cleverley were playing in that team. And at the start of the season, we were battering everyone. And then we played City. And I think we were only, were we down to 10 men? I can't remember. But we were only losing 3-1, like coming up to the end of the match. And then we got stung with those 3 goals. And that was so sickening. But I think that had such a hangover. And I think we lost the league that season. And I think it was to do with that because it was the Everton match we played when we drew 4-4 and they came back from 4-2 down. We were vulnerable. We were scared. We've been hurt. And I think that, and I don't think we've ever shook that off properly. But these past few years, it's just been disastrous through some of the results that have gone against us. And it's the mentality within the team as well. You obviously completely questioning now, what is going on? What is going on? You wouldn't, you look at the history, it's never happened until you go back to the early 1900s or some other, some kind of time there. But in all the kind of competitive rivalry, there's never been a capitulation like that. So I still think that, we're those are wounds that kind of carry with you. You see it all through the season with us. We're ahead. We're winning by 2 goals against teams. We lost against Copenhagen. We were brilliant first half. 2-0. We're happy. I think they scored just before half time, and then they go and beat us 3-2. The Coventry match was the maddest game ever. I mean, we were out of that for about a minute. It was about a minute before they were saying there's a VAR check. So it was like, what's just happened? This is the most embarrassing result in the history of the FA Cup. Bar none, this will be spoke about for all time. And we were reprieved by VAR on that. And, we even went and missed the first penalty. But, we somehow got through that. And, that's where we are. I mean, I think my feelings with Liverpool and with all this as well, I think Liverpool as a city is filled with emotion. It's an emotional city. It's the city where they waved off people who were going, to America. They'll never see them again. So it has this, and it's all part of the kind of fabric and the culture of Liverpool. And I think when it gets to a situation like where you are in the football, I mean, football is religion in Liverpool. And I remember, quite literally, I remember like years ago with the Echo, I remember like the obituary columns, and you started to see in there, the Liverpool Crescent or the Everton, and, that's rather, it was a cross before, it's some kind of prayer. Now it's not. And so it's so locked into that within Liverpool. Manchester is a more progressive, kind of forward thinking. It's been involved with computers, industry and everything. It has Liverpool's this port city, and as I said, and I think if you go back to the famous Gerrard, we don't let this slip. I remember watching that match at the time. You just beat City 3-2, amazing match, and it was right in your hands. And I remember him going on the pitch, and I remember the cameras being right in close so they could hear what he was saying. And my attitude was, get them off the pitch. Get them off the pitch. You've won this. You've got to close it down. And it was at the time when every match Liverpool played, there were crowds and crowds of people as the coaches were coming in. It was just fervent, the whole thing. And in that moment, it was absolutely in your hands. And I just felt that what he did at that moment, it was wrong to do that. It was get him off. And I remember seeing, as this was going on, Company was walking off the pitch, defeated, probably over for them this season. But, he had his head held high, and he was, some kind of dignity about it. Whereas this kind of thing going on in the centre, and I just felt that was it. I just thought the emotion, there's too much emotion. There's too much. It needs to be brought down, and the head needs to come into play now. And somehow. And so this season, with Klopp saying that he's going, I mean, for a slight moment, it looked like it could be a masterstroke. It could drive your team on to win these things and everything. But I remember with Fergie, he did the same thing. He announced he was leaving before the end of the season. And the season didn't pan out the way that we would have hoped. It wasn't a great season. But he then slipped and decided he was going to stay. And so it carried on from there. So I just feel that all this mass of emotion and everybody so much wanting it to happen, even like everything's mapped out perfectly. There's a Europa League final in Dublin, for God's sake. It's all going to be this great send-off. And, I think that once a few problems came into play, that they were over-amplified. That, as I say, that result against United, looking at it from a different, a pure head point of view, it's in our own hands. We're same points are all right. They've got a better goal difference, but that can change around. Arsenal are going to drop more points than us if we're the team that we have been. But it was so defeatist after that match. It was. I remember going back to look at league table again and thinking, it's still all there for you. You're still absolutely, but you were talking as though you're in the position where you are now, where City'd have to lose twice, and for it to happen, Arsenal have to implode and stuff. So I think that kind of emotion sometimes can have a negative aspect, certainly with Liverpool, because it's such an emotional city.
It is.
That makes sense.
No, complete sense. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I just think sometimes, for me, Virgil should have just gone, okay, it's all right. It's a point. Yeah. 80 United. Lots of teams come to United and come away with no points. We're still in a title race. But I just think we walked off that pitch, heads were down, and we shouldn't have. We should have still walked off the pitch,
like Vincent Kompany,
chest out, going, we're still in this. But then the Palace game for us just sealed it, especially with Villa beating Arsenal as well. It could have been we could have been ahead. It was just. I think we've overachieved this season, to be honest, as well.
I agree with you. I mean, I think you've got an amazing kind of bunch of players coming through, and what's different now, you're obviously going to get a lot of people saying, oh, right, Klopp's gone, it's all going to go.
Yeah.
But I don't have that. I mean, it did at United, because what happened, we brought in Moyes, and the first thing he did, rather than look at this as a winning machine I've come into, he changed all the backroom staff. and brought in, guys that hadn't won anything. So now he's working with players that have won everything. And, whereas Liverpool's more of a structure, you've got Edwards back and stuff, that the manager should be able to fit into that structure, and your whole style and your approach and everything is the club, so I don't think it will be like a kind of United type situation here. I think Liverpool have got some, as I say, I mean, what Klopp's left you with is some really great young players coming through, and, with the right mentality. And, I think as a club, you've run yourself really, really well, since you got rid of the Americans, the ones you had. I don't see that you're just going to kind of all of a sudden, struggle because of that. I think that it might be that you're not kind of able to kind of compete with the cities and stuff for a couple of seasons. But, I think that eventually you've got the capability of doing that.
Yeah,
what we want to get towards. We're a good few years off that now because we keep messing it up with how we're kind of going about it. But I think your structure is firm and solid in play, and you have overachieved. No one at the beginning of the season was thinking Liverpool were going to win the league.
No. In my little group on the mates that are on the podcast, only one said Liverpool was going to win the league, or the rest of us were like, it's cities. Just because we had a whole new midfield, and that just I didn't think they were going to gel as quickly as they did that first part of the season. And if you would have asked me on mid-August, first match of the season, how do you think it's going to pan out? Winning a trophy, getting back in the Champions League, I would have bitten your hand off.
Yeah,
I seriously would. And
you've done that.
Challenging for the league with 3 weeks to go, I would have said no chance, not with this new midfield. But what Klopp's done, and what I really like about it, is he's leaving Liverpool better than what he found it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Without a doubt.
There's 50-50 with Liverpool supporters. Is 50% can't stand FSG, 50% are like, well, they've done some wrong things, but they've rectified them and they're playing by the rules and they've put the infrastructure in place. This is what United needs, is the infrastructure. You need your facilities. Like Old Trafford, I mean, good God, it's falling down.
Well, I mean, we haven't even picked for the, what was it? Was it the Euros have come up? They're going to play at certain grounds in the UK, and United aren't on it.
Yeah, which should be one of the first ones on there. Yeah, it's just the facilities are just, and I mean, hopefully, Sir Richard is going to come in and well, I mean, I hope you keep that horrible stadium for the rest of everyone's lives, but I'm not foolish. He's going to put money into the stadium. He's going to put money into, the training facilities. But it's just, how does it make you feel? Like, you had a player like Ronaldo who was absolutely brilliant for you. I don't think he should have ever been brought back. I just don't. Because the second time he made it all about him. Yeah. And it was just like I'm a little diva, and when he kind of sauntered off, he said a few horrible things about United, like your training facilities were shite. Even
he helped us in a way by saying that stuff. Even
your food was shite, which
it's probably good that he said that, because it did flag it up. We should never have brought him back. Again, that's a romantic thing to do. It's not, and also we had the whole thing with Greenwood as well that popped up,
Mm-hmm.
So you've got your golden boy who's like, your superstar for the next 10 years, and it's all gone wrong there. Rashford, he's so hot and cold.
Mm-hmm.
He's awful at the moment. Last season, all of a sudden, he was brilliant.
Do you think that's a coaching thing for him? But I mean, you know, when he started, like he was knocking them in. He had the pace. It just seems the last couple of seasons, because he's how old is he now? 25.
Yeah, so he's coming up to as like a senior player, he's the
Yeah,
one young ones should be looking up to, and he's still playing like, inconsistent young kid, you know, I think with Rashford, it's a lot of confidence to do with it. I mean, from reading between the lines and what people have kind of said, I think that the people that surround him, they treat him, like a superstar. And I think it all got conflated with when we were in COVID, and he did all that great charity work and everything, and the meals, and he did brilliantly, and his stature as a person, not a footballer. But I think that all got conflated with the football, and maybe he thinks he is Ronaldo, and maybe, it's everyone around him tells him that, and he thinks that it's other things that's wrong. I don't know, but whatever it is, he's just not doing it. I mean,
yeah. I mean, for
and
me,
the work rate's not there. He's just not working for the team. So,
I mean, you're a professional footballer, right? You know, this isn't like the 60s, 70s, or even 80s, where you could have a ciggy, and have a few pints. You know, he's off in, like, where was he? Dublin.
Yeah,
the night before.
Yeah,
like, come on, lad, you can do that on the off season. Like, that you're a professional, and then missing training. Like, he's missed training quite a few times.
Yeah,
With a few managers, and that's got to start sticking in your ear, like, and your mind going, why?
There is a little bit of a believe in his own myth aspect. Also, I think that he took an injury, a shoulder injury, a few years ago, and it kind of kept him out for a little while. And when he come back from that, he was a little bit kind of gingerly, kind of approaching it and everything. And he's not physical with players. Very rarely wins a header. Often he's out like like for a short corner. And I'm thinking, you're a big tall guy here, get yourself in the box, but he's not. So there's a physical side, and I think that possibly goes back to that injury, that he's just kind of, like, took away his confidence in a sense, in that way. And whereas all of a sudden, like last season, he goes through this spell where he's just doing amazing stuff, and his physicality is there, and he's bursting past players, and he's strong, and everything's working. And then it kind of goes back to where it was. It's like season on, season off with him. That's how it's kind of working. That you have a terrible season, you're thinking, and then all of a sudden he comes good again. But a lot of United fans, I think, are at the point now that it's time to go. I think we had a terrible culture in our club. And it's akin, again, Liverpool, United, sides of a coin, going back to your Spice Boys era, the white suits at Wembley, that kind of mentality that was going on there. Well, we had that with Jesse Lingard and with Pogba, and Rashford falls into that. Rashford was under Lingard's wing. And so there's a little bit of that kind of aspect to it as well. That's, so I think the United fans are kind of at the point now where to sell him, I mean, if we got the money we wanted for him, would be the best option. I mean, I look at what we've got, and I don't like, look at Rashford as was one of our main men at all at the minute. Often when he's out the team, they look more fluid, and it's kind of happening more. So I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of probably thinking it'd be right for all parties if, he made a move. He probably needs to get away from Manchester, get away from the people that are around him, be in a different environment. I mean, I saw a really interesting podcast recently with, what's his name? Paddy Lacey. Do you know him? He was a youth player for Liverpool.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
I mean, it's a brilliant. He ended up going to jail and everything, and he failed a drugs test in football. I mean, it's a kind of great story about how things can go wrong, And so he's telling the story, but his younger brother, he just turned 17. He's called Shay Lacey, and he's with United. He for whatever reason became a United fan, but also the dad, who was really far too hands-on when he was at Liverpool. He was kind of telling the coach. He was actually at one point he told the coaches he thought the training, because he'd been up to United and said it, training's better at United. So he's telling that. So it's not what they want to hear. So I think he was kind of pushed out the door when I think he went to Blackburn or somewhere, and then ended up like a journeyman. Well, he's a boxer now as well. He's a professional boxer. He's going to start challenging for title. Amazing guy. But his younger brother's at United. And one of the things that he'd said in his story about maybe why he didn't was because he's surrounded where he is by people that, he's grown up with, that know him, that, or people who are fans of the club be telling him things that he should be doing and everything, his father. Whereas I think they saw that as, like how it can go wrong. And when the younger, because he's probably about 10 years between them, if not more, when the younger one came up, it's like get him away from that environment, put him into, and he's developing great at the minute. I mean, there's a lot of kind of shouting about him, as being like a bit of a wonder kid. So he's just coming through now. It'd be interesting to see in 3 or 4 years what happens with him. But, that kind of, the fact that Liverpool United fans, that's a strange thing. I mean, you wonder why I'm a United fan.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, I hate to say it, but I've watched some, really good United teams. One of my favourite United players was Brian Robson, Captain Marvel. He just had it all. He could tackle, he could pass, he could score. And I look at like a captain like him, even like Roy Keane as well, hard as hell. And then I look at Bruno Fernandes, who waves his arms in the air every single damn match, puts his head down, cries a lot. What's your thoughts on him? He's a fantastic footballer, but by God, he gets on my last nerves.
Yeah. I mean, mercurial, isn't he? He's got amazing talent, but he's so wasteful within that. I mean, all these statistics, because obviously with United fans, there's for and against. There's a lot of United fans that would quite happily see him go. They think that he makes the team, the midfield, dysfunctional. But then again, he can do it in a moment. He can kind of change a game. He's been a great goal. I think it was a mistake him getting the captaincy. Mm-hmm. But then again, who else? We haven't got any natural captains that kind of step forward at the minute. I think maybe that kind of puts a little bit too much on him. I don't know. I think it's one of those. I think that if we solve another, like we've got like in the midfield now, we've got Mainu, who's going to be long term, I would imagine. We need somebody serious in that midfield, and Casemiro's on his last legs in lots of ways.
Eriksen's done as well.
Done. I mean, I actually like McTominay. I think he's a real honest player. I think in years past, Ferguson would have loved him, like he loved John O'Shea and Wes Brown. Not the stars, but these guys you could fit in anywhere in the team. They'll always give you 100%. McTominay gets a lot of criticism, because he's not good enough and everything. But sometimes he's all we've got. He's all we've got. And this season, without his goals, we'd be like, certainly way in the bottom half of the league. He's done great. So I keep someone like McTominay because of the utility aspect of it, but the rest. So maybe if you plug that, if we would have bought like someone like Rice, Rice would have been perfect.
We would have bought Rice. He's a London boy, though. That's there was no chance of him leaving London. But yeah, I mean, That I think that's the thing with both us and Man United. We're missing just that key ingredient in midfield. I still think we're missing like a hard man, like because I think we're playing this like nice football, but I still think we need, like, Fabinho used to be that person, used to get in there, and I think we're missing that. Endo, to me, he's 29. You know, he's done all right for coming in, from the Bundesliga, and it took him a while to get kind of like up to date with the pace of the league. But do I think he's our defensive midfielder to take us to the next level? Not a chance. I just don't. And I think that's what we need. What do you think? Like, if you were today to look at your starting 11 for next season, what do you think needs to happen?
Ooh, well, it's just major surgery, isn't it? It's like Ranić said it a few years ago. He said it needs open heart surgery, and he was right. And I think there was a mistake there, because he was just the caretaker manager, but really he was going to be our director of football. So he was just kind of, and then when they got Ten Hag didn't want him involved, and in the end, they kind of distanced from him and distanced from his statements, and that's what his report was, that it's a dysfunctional club and that it needs open heart surgery. And everyone was like, oh, probably within the club, the thing, it doesn't need that much, just a tweak here and there. But he could see it, and that's what it needs. Is that if you look across. If you look at the team, Onana, he's come in, he's made a few mistakes here and there, but I think he'll be all right. Dallow's done well for us. He can play on either side. He always puts everything into it. Yeah. You look at the centre halves, though. Varane, he's going to go. He's getting on. Johnny Evans has done an amazing job for us this season. Who would have thought that? I mean, I think he'll stay on the coaching staff and maybe keep as a kind of option. Maguire has a really good season. He's really bounced back from all the criticism, but he's just not good enough.
Yeah.
He's just for what we want to play. Martinez is great. When he come in, wow, we've got like a player here. But he's been kind of injured all season. We've hardly seen him. So, we're still looking at, and then on the left side, we've got a great left back in Shaw, but he's always injured.
Yeah.
And the other guy, Malaysia, we bought, he's been out all season as well. So that's been our big problem this season. We've played all sorts of people at left back. We haven't had a proper left back. And, so the defence has been shot pretty much all season. I can kind of understand the people that say, the injuries that we've had, and they have been horrific this season. But nevertheless, you've got to cope with these kind of things, and then. So the midfield, as I said, that Mainoo's going to be about, but I don't really, know we need more bodies in there. Garnacho's great, yeah. Anthony is, hasn't worked out. I don't like him as a person, a character. It's another Bruno kind of hands in the air. It's that we don't want that. I like Garnacho. He's always. He's always there. I hate it when they take him off. It's like that Liverpool match where the last minute goal, that was him bursting forward at the end, having played 120 minutes. The guy will give you that. And so, the fans get so frustrated when they see like Garnacho pulled off and Rashford still on, who's having an awful game. Højlund, still potential. I'm not blown away, Ahmad hasn't had enough games, to really fully evaluate it. So we're thin. We're really, really wafer thin. You're not looking at this a few younger kids that could kind of make the breakthrough soon. But I mean, they're talking about now, they've basically kind of said the kind of everyone has the price apart from these younger ones that we want to keep. They've more or less said that at the club at the minute. So let's see what happens from there. Maybe clubs don't want to buy them. I don't know. Maybe we've been stuck with players like Martial all these years. We're out of contract now. They'll go for free. You know, this is what's Pogba. We lost the guy. We bought him back for nearly 100 million, and then he goes for free. I mean, you can't make it up. It's just like the one thing after another. It's just been, you just wonder where the head's at. And I think that was it. They brought in Woodward, who wasn't a football man. He was a marketing businessman who was brilliant at getting all the deals. United were like rolling in money from him. But, you know, he told Klopp, you know, we're like, you know, kind of Disneyland here. United the Disneyland. And Klopp probably thought, I don't like the sound of that. You know, we don't like the sound of that. It's like, it's like, he didn't understand it. He didn't understand the whole nature. Probably let managers, you know, have too much say in what they were buying. And there's been so many bad decisions made over the years. So, yeah, first thing for us is now like put together some kind of structure that means if a manager goes, even like you, it's a great manager to, you know, and it's a big shoes to fill, and maybe they won't be filled, certainly not in the same way. But the structure's there for you, and if he goes, it should still be there, and somebody comes in, and you know, you can work within that. And so that's what we need to do now, is to kind of put the structure in place and then start identifying the players. And I'm not into, you know, we were going through all these. We've signed so many players over the past 10 years who were on the back end of the career, great players, Ibrahimovic, who actually did all right for us, you know, others, Falcao, you know, what's Sanchez from Arsenal? What was that about? You know, go from being brilliant to just rubbish, you know. So that's got to go. I'd rather build a young team. United have always been about youth.
Yeah, it takes a while. That's the thing. Like, you know, like you messaged me, you know, it comes in circles, and it does. Success comes in circles. And I just think United need to take a step back, stop with the buying of the older players, look into the academy, point these players out, just like Liverpool are doing. You know, Conor Bradley has just absolutely amazed me, you know. Even Bobby Clark, the young striker Dan's, you know, they're getting a look in because they're having a manager that believes in them.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on, like, are you ready to, you know, cut the umbilical cord on Ten Hag, or do you think he can go another season?
I don't know. I'm really on the fence because, you know, it has been horrendous, and he's been the manager through our worst results in history, in a sense, with Liverpool and stuff. And, you know, so, you know, when he come in, he did it was, you know, that first kind of 2/3 of the season up to us winning the League Cup was great. Could see that something was happening. We were looking good, you know, and then after that League Cup, it just went really off, and it's never come back since then. We've, you know, I think it's the Liverpool results as well, the 7-0. I think that just, you know, you've got to be so embarrassed as a player as well to do that. And then you're scared, you know, everything's going well. Like the Coventry, a goal goes in. Okay, they've got the consolation, firm it up, we'll be all right. Even the second one, it was a bit of a fluke. It came in off his back. Okay, just, you know, keep your nerve. But the panicking and dropping back, rather than thinking we can go and score more goals here because we're the better team and we've been all over them. But now we've settled for the 3-0, and it's not 3-0 anymore, it's 3-2. And we're panicking and we're going back, and eventually they do it, you know. So, you know, that's us all over at the minute.
Well, I hope it continues for a very long time.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. But I was saying, though, you've never asked me why I'm a United fan, yet I'm from Merseyside.
I'm about to. Yeah. That was absolutely.
Why would you? Have you any idea why that might be the case?
Maybe you playing in Manchester for so long.
No? Obviously, I was a United fan way before I ever went to Manchester. I grew up.
Naughty boy.
Well, no, I mean it kind of gets to the kernel of what Manchester United is. I'm a United fan because my brother, who's 10 years older than me, was a United fan. Yeah. My brother was a United fan because of Munich. When the Munich air disaster happened, he was an 8-year-old kid. And like a lot of kids in this country, the sympathy, that's where United's fan base came from. At that moment in time, City had as big a fan base as United in the 50s. But once that had happened, the disaster, and those young players and how, were what they were supposed to do, it was this wave of like kind of sympathy towards United. And that's why we had a kind of international fan base, national fan base. Liverpool eventually gained that themselves. At that same point in time, Liverpool was a Liverpool fan base. As they started to kind of get those great teams in the 70s and 80s, then people. And so United and Liverpool down the line, you go. I mean, I remember a DJ called Steve Walsh. He's dead now. He came up from London when I was at Legend in Manchester. He was working for PRT Records at the time, I think it was, or Red Bus, who had Imagination, R&B Records. And we went to the match. I think he was a Chelsea fan. Big fat, big lad, big Cockney lad he was. And I remember we were going into the match, and he was like being really quiet, and he was kind of trying to not kind of stand out as a Cockney. And I remember at one point saying, he said, "Yeah, what I don't." I said, "Go to the coach park. People here from everywhere. Don't worry about your accent. It's and that's what we were, and that's what you became as well. We have this, and it's an international fan base and everything. And that's why when you get this situation with City and everything, that there is a side of me, the rational side, that would say, I want you to beat them because you're a proper team, you're a proper club. You've done it all off your own reputation. You've built it over the years, just like we have. We didn't just get this massive injection that took us from being, a perennial average team that goes up and down the divisions to now being this elite force that you can't beat hardly. So there is a kind of aspect of it's an artificial situation that happened there. Whereas, as United and Liverpool, as much as we dislike each other, there's a respect that we're at least proper football clubs that have a history and have built that reputation over time. And we've had our tragedies and everything, and so, yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. But going back to that Munich thing, is that he would go and watch United. There was only a small amount of people there. I think he got a coach in Liverpool. They went to the match. Now, he never took me. I was, even now, I think he never took me all those years, and I would have loved to have gone. And he'd come back and they had things like song sheets, Stretford End song sheets, and they were like photocopied paper with all these songs. And I remember seeing them all, and they'd bring the programs back and all that, So I kind of got into United through him. And the first match I remember was 1968 European Cup semi-final against Real Madrid. That's what I remember, the one where we come. I think I remember the 1-0 the first leg, but I definitely remember the 3-3 when we got through to the final. And obviously I remember the final, and then we didn't win anything for ages. It just went all wrong after that. A bit like now, we had this kind of period. We even got relegated. But we'd reached that kind of promised land. And again, it's so emotional from the United side with the disaster that now 10 years after that had happened, and with like players in the team who were on that kind of plane and everything, we'd done it. And I think they were all coming to, Bobby Charlton, these players were coming to a certain age by then. Matt Busby was getting ready to retire. And that's the sadness of George Best, because he was like, George Best had retired at 26. And I think that when that happened, he thought it was going to be more and more and more. And then he saw it all kind of dropping off around him, and he was left to hold that team together, like for the next, 3 or 4 years, until he just went completely off the rails and stuff. And they'd done it then. And then we went like back into that kind of whole fallow period and got relegated. Tommy Docherty, put together an exciting team. Stop you doing a treble, remember? When and then he goes and has an affair with the physiotherapist's wife and has a good Catholic club or whatever. United he's gone, and we go through Sexton and Atkinson and even the early Fergie period, because it didn't look, when you said about Ten Hag, I remember that early Fergie period when he come in. And I think the first season he came in, it was a steadying ship season. Second season, we were runners up. Mm-hmm. So he did a great, and then the third season, it just like we went off, we were 8th or something, and even lower. And it was the FA Cup thing that everybody talks about that kind of supposedly saved his job, and the fans were turning against him. I remember how I just thought, this isn't United. This just isn't this, the way we're playing isn't. And it was only later, with hindsight, that I understood. Right, what he's doing is he's fixing the foundations. He's getting the defensive side right before he adds it. And you wait. It's just not the United style. And then also, we're getting them more solid. Then all of a sudden we're adding. I think the first inkling of it was he signed Lee Sharp from Torquay, and he played like left back quite a bit, but as a young player, and he gave us something to hold on to. He looked a player, and then the next season, I think it was, Giggs came into play, and so now we're getting the wide players, and we bought Cancha, and now we're looking like United. This is United down the wings, attacking football, and and then the young players come through, and the kind of whole Busby Babes ethos kind of works in line with the class of '92, and he just got it perfect. But in that early stage, it just looked all over the place, and it looked like, does he know what he's doing? Is he out of his depth? So there's a bit of me that says with Ten Hag, I don't know, maybe give him another season. I mean, at the minute, it's embarrassing because he's coming out after matches where we've obviously played really, really badly, and he's telling us we dominated, and, we know we didn't. So, but he's under a lot of pressure himself, so I don't know. I think it depends on who is available next season. I don't want to just snatch at a manager and just get someone in instead. I'd rather keep him another year and identify the right person that we want and get him, at that time than we've had some horrendous kind of suggestions, like who did they say? I mean, like people like
Southgate.
Okay, cool. I mean, imagine.
No.
And some of the, like Potter as well. Potter's come up a lot. I think that's because there's connections between certain people here and there. There's a lot of speculation. Yourself that we just get linked with everyone and everything. It's like your manager, that everyone's talking all sorts of things. No one is mentioning slots. No one. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, you've done the deal. And that's why I think your structure's good. Because you've done it, you haven't waited around, you haven't panicked, you haven't just you knew who you wanted, you've identified them, got them done. Whether or not he'll be up to it, it's all in. We never know, do we? But as I say, I think your structure will allow you, if he isn't up to it, to change it without what happened with us, where it all goes west completely and we fall apart. I mean, Moyes came in and sold. A lot of those players that have won us trophy. I mean, they were back end of the career, but maybe it would have been wiser to keep them around a little bit longer for the experience and everything. And,
you need that balance, don't you? You need the balance of senior players and youngsters. The youngsters can look up, to the senior players for mentality, and they can watch them in training. And that's what you want in a club, and I just...
Well, that's what you've got, and that your young players are looking up now to the older players, and they're getting all the right habits. And so moving on, as you're bringing players in, they're coming into the right kind of environment, working environment. Whereas we lost it. What we had, that total mentality, bit by bit, through bad decisions, it eroded, so that we obviously don't have like that kind of. The club would have been run like Roy Keane era and stuff from the dressing room. not the manager wouldn't even have to say anything. The senior players would see it and say it and pull everybody in line. And whereas, like you say, you don't really see Bruno having that kind of force of personality to be able to do that. So yeah, just so many variables within our situation. But it reminds me of like when we were in the 70s, and I used to work in a club in New Brighton, and the guy who worked in the food bar was a big Liverpool fan, and we often used to speak. And I remember at the beginning of the season, it was like, this is going to be, we're going to kind of come, we're going to do it. And I kind of say to him and try to explain why, we've got this player and this, and he just very matter of fact say, nah, it won't happen. And Liverpool would win again that season. He could see it. I was just on the, we've got to get back, and just that hope and everything. But yeah, I think we're a little bit there now that, realistically, it's not going to change for a few more years. We've got to kind of, and even then, it's got to be the right people we bring in. We might get it all wrong again. Who knows? We might find ourselves in 2 more years back in the same situation, trying to get rid of players, that we don't want to keep or can't because we're paying them too much, and the players that we've brought in not performing. And that's the way it's been. It's been a kind of cycle of that. So, I'm more confident with the new owners. I think it's what we need, and it's what we've been crying out for years. And we're getting proper football people in for all the different roles and everything. So hopefully that'll work.
So, Greg, I want to ask you, I've said Brian Robson was my, I'm not going to say like favourite Man United player because, again, I'm Liverpool through and through. He was just a player that I really enjoyed watching. For Liverpool, who was a player that, you thought, all right, I'd have him for United?
Oh, obviously a few down the line, but recently though, and I know that at the minute there's a lot of debate with Liverpool fans about him and Salah. Wow, what a player! He's got to go down as one of your greatest of all time. And I kind of feel a little bit sorry for people criticising him in the thing last week with Klopp. And I think a lot of that was to do with these are 2 winners, and it's going wrong, and they can't get a hold of it, get a grip. Maybe Salah is annoyed because he's been taken off or he's going on late or whatever, but it's all that's there because I think you become as a team really leggy in the past month or so. And I think Salah's kind of suffered. He went to the internationals and everything, the African nations and stuff. And I kind of think of Paul Scholes, like that he retired from England early. We were able to work with that player till he was like, I think he retired at 38 or something in the end. He had that 1 year off and then came back again. But we were able to elongate his time. And I think with someone like Salah, he's such a brilliant player that he could readapt and give you another few amazing years, but he wants to play the internationals and, he has so you're not going to get that. And so he's come back, he's tired, and it's not working. If he has a summer off, and comes back next season, you might see it all happening again. But he's not getting any younger. So his game time needs managed. Like Ferguson managed Scholes' game time brilliantly. You take him out on certain matches, big matches, there he is. He's back in the team. And so he knew how he was being played. So I don't know if Salah would be prepared for a kind of role like that. But I think you could have another 2 or 3 years out of him if he did. But I kind of figure that perhaps, he just wants to play, He's one of those that just wants to play every night.
Yeah, I just think, that a lot of people took that. I don't understand the hate for Salah. I just don't. He's a legend for us. He had his first injury in a very, very long time. He's never injured. And I think what's happened with Liverpool is we've rushed players back. Trent hasn't looked the same since he's come back from injury. Szoboszlai, exactly the same. I think we're rushing these players back because we relied too much on the youngsters. and then the youngsters, it took their toll, so we had to bring them back. But I'm with you. I just think it was a little spat. They're born winners, and any footballer doesn't like to be benched.
Yeah.
And if they said, "Oh yeah, I don't mind it," then you don't want them on your team. It's so funny when people go, Salah's like throwing his shit down on the floor when he's coming off. That's the kind of player I want. I don't want a player smiling and skipping, going, I've been substituted. I want them frothing at the mouth, going, I don't want to come off. And I think that's what happened. I think Klopp kind of just said, go out there, let's do your best. Salah was like, well, what do you want me to do in 10 minutes?
Yeah,
I think that's all it is.
There's frustration both ways.
Of course it is, but I just think he's 31, right? His contract ends next season. I think they're going to give him probably a 2 or 3 year deal, and then I think what will happen, I think next season they'll sell him. I think we'll keep him for a season, but because of the contract extension, we'll be able to get money and not let him go for free. But all these people going, we should just sell him to Saudi. He's like you said, he's still got 3-4 years at the top level.
To Saudi,
I mean, I'm sorry, but if you want to go to Saudi Arabia, you want to finish your footballing career, and it's all about money. Mm-hmm. And I think he still wants to win these major trophies. I mean, we're back in the Champions League next season. I don't think he's going anywhere, and unless there's just an insane bid of 200 million, then you've got to have that conversation. But I don't think it'll be. I think a Saudi club will probably offer 100. But I think we'll keep it going. I just think, like you said, give him a summer off, get him back, pre-season, and we go again. I just think and maybe instead of being so out on the right, I think maybe bring him in centrally a bit more. I really do, and then put some, because he's lost his pace. Yeah. He has.
Well, he's getting older. But great players can readapt.
Yeah,
and he's a great player, and he would be able to do that, I'm sure. But it's just a matter of he's playing so much all the time that's going to take its kind of bearing. I mean, the 2 Liverpool players that I was really annoyed to see you sign, because I knew they were Fergie players. I knew that they were exactly the players that he would have gone for, were Mane and Virgil van Dijk.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would. I think Fergie, if he would have been about, would have had Virgil van Dijk from Celtic. And Mane. I mean, to lose a player like him, I don't think people have fully comprehended how incredible he was for you too. And you had the 3 of them. You had Firmino as well, although he wasn't the big goal scorer. He linked the whole thing together. And now you've only got one of those guys left who's not firing full throttle. You've got Núñez coming in that is flattering to deceive. He looks like he could do it, but he's not doing it for some reason. He's causing that chaos. It's great to throw him in there, but he's missing very easy chances. Diaz seems, pretty good, but again,
he's not scoring the goals.
He's got such a massive act to follow again, and so these things kind of take time. You deconstruct that and try to build it again in a different way. At the same time, you're building your defense, and so, like you said, for you, in many respects, it was a kind of transitional season. And I kind of almost think that with the announcement that he was retiring, that you went all in. The Klopp maybe could see we're not as good as City, but what we have got is, we've got this kind of spirit and belief and everything. And the announcement being made at that point, in theory, galvanizes everything and brings these young players through who you have to depend on as well as your experienced players, and gives you that push. And it looked like it was potentially working. Mm-hmm. You played great until about a month ago. Yeah. You were So, it was one of them. But I just think too much. It just got too much. It was like people were.
Well, it's the fairy tale,
It is. You want the fairy tale. I mean, we had a bit of it with. I remember there was a Champions League final in Glasgow when we got knocked out in the semi-final, and that would have been an amazing kind of occasion and everything, and and sometimes these things don't work out. But I don't think you've had a bad season. I think you've had a good season.
Yeah, I just think like I said at the start of the season, if you would have said trophy, challenging for the league, getting to the quarterfinals of Europa and FA Cup, I would have taken it. But I think, we kind of all started to get into this fairy tale of Klopp winning everything. I tried not to, but we were playing well up until a month ago. So I think we all started to believe it. Like, wow, is this going to be the season where we just kind of win all of it, and Klopp's gonna, get on a horse and ride off into the sunset with all these trophies, and we're gonna be, partying for the next 10 years, and then we get hit. It's like a marathon runner hits that brick wall and you just can't keep going. That's
how I see it.
That's what's happened. And I've got to go back to just going, you know what? Our season is pretty good. It's something to base next season on.
Absolutely. That's it. If you hadn't have thought that you were going to win, or you had a chance of winning the title, maybe if you were challenging, but City were always out in front, and anyone can go out in the Europa. It's like, I think you just look on it as, it's been all right. It's been a transitional season. We've managed to bed in a load of younger players. We've managed to kind of, certainly keep the pace with everything. We're still up there. We haven't dropped off. Mm-hmm. I mean, the season before you dropped off a bit, but, I think this season's obviously an improvement. So it's all in the right direction. So to look at it as though it's some kind of disaster and it's all gone wrong, and, individual matches and things like that happen. But in the bigger picture, like you said, at the start of the season, you would have been absolutely fine with this, this scenario. I mean, but you've got the variable in there of Klopp's going. That kind of, you wanted to do it for him. You wanted to make it happen for him this season, and it hasn't happened in the way that it maybe could have. But in terms of just the club moving forward and everything, everything's in place. The structure's in place. The players are in place. You've got great youngsters coming through. If this new manager's like a good manager, he'll be able to help. We might be talking in 2 or 3 years, and you're the dominating team. And you're thinking about, it was great the Klopp era, but we've got it now. This is it. You never know, where it's going to come from. City have got it. I mean, Pep's not going to stay there forever.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't be even surprised if he's thinking now Klopp's gone. Now's the time for him to, if he wins this 4, what can he do? Go and win everything again, or everything again? It's like you say, it doesn't have that kind of, even when City won the treble last year, for City fans it's fantastic, but the rest of people almost like, they've got all that money, and they've, whereas when we won the treble, it was just like this kind of amazing, and they've taken that. Well, they haven't taken it. We were always first, but we're not the only ones anymore, and stuff. So I think you're on the right tracks, definitely.
Well, hopefully we'll talk again, and hopefully we've won more trophies. But it's still nice to be, still on top of that perch. We're still. It doesn't matter how many, City win all these trophies. United and Liverpool are still the 2 biggest teams in England, and I think will always be.
And it's that's the way it is, because they are the biggest. And when we tour and stuff, there's massive huge fan bases. maybe there are like City fans now evolving all over the place, and maybe, you know, in 10 years' time, you know, they'll have closed that gap a little bit more. But as it is, but you know, I mean, they're not going to. It's too much history. It's too deep. It's too deep. You know, with, you know, Liverpool. Even if we have our, you know, all those years that you spent where you didn't win the league and everything, you didn't vanish, and you still like had massive, massive fan base, and you know, it's not going to go away. People are invested so deeply in the teams, and then their families become invested in them and their children and everything. So, and you know, that history is that really means something. You know, that kind of that tradition of what we've got as clubs and what we represent. And it's really weird because I was looking. You know, we were talking about things going in cycles. I remember when we were starting. I think it was when we were going to get the 18th title, so we were going to equal Liverpool. And I'm sure I looked back through the records, and it was almost like one for one. That Liverpool win a title, United win a title. Then 20 years later, Liverpool win a title. You know, Liverpool win 2, United win 2. Then Liverpool win a load, like, you know, kind of 8 or 9 or whatever. And that was it. It was gone then. You were so far ahead. And then the same thing happened. You know, it kind of went back the other way, but we actually kind of took it to the 20. And we're holding on to that's our last stat, isn't it? You know, the 20, we've got it. At least you haven't got 20. But, you know, and everything, I mean, the European, we should have won more Europeans, of course, and everything. And you obviously hold the upper hand on that. But, you know, we've got to get back into winning again before we even start to kind of think about, like, you know, who holds the upper hand on certain things, you know. And from your side, I do think Klopp's been a really great manager, because he was put into a situation that was, you know, he had to battle against, you know, like you say, the juggernaut, and he's won every trophy for Liverpool.
Apart
Pardon?
In Europa League.
Apart from the Europa. But, you know, he's won the main ones, hasn't he? Champions League, he's won the FA Cup, the League Cup twice, he's won the, you know, so you have like, yeah, you could look at it like, yeah, could have been more, could have been. It's like us with Ferguson when, like, it could have been more Champions Leagues, but we just happened to be, you know, go up against Barcelona, probably seen as the best team of all time in 2 finals. If they weren't about, we would have won them, possibly more, you know, but they were about. Such is life. You can't do anything about it. You just got to get on with it, you know. But I just think that's been your lot, really.
Yeah, but yeah, I just look for, you know, this season to finish, and then just, you know, see where we're at next season. But, you know, it's been it's already been like an hour and a bit, you know, and we haven't even got into like the musical stuff. I'll have to have you back on because I definitely want to talk to you about, you know, your musical background and everything. I mean, I know a lot about you, from, you know, reading, obviously, like, get your music and listen to, you know, the Giles Peterson was absolutely brilliant, by the way.
The interview.
Yeah,
I'm glad you saw that. Yeah, the one I did in Australia with him.
Yeah, I loved it. Well, I love him as well. You know, he's like he's not just a DJ. He's like a curator, archivalist, just like yourself. You know, everything like about him and yourself, I just love, just because, you know, music is a world thing. It doesn't have to be house. It doesn't have to be funk, soul. You know, it just has to move you, and that's what I really like, and I really enjoyed it. And, you know, because let me ask you this really quick, because I hope you will come back on
Absolutely.
and
No problem.
you know, talk about the musical part. But what's your thoughts on like today's DJ so-called world? You know, because you've got to have like social media presence now. You've got to have a brand. What's your thoughts on that? Coming from where you've come from, you know, and obviously you did take a break and then you came back.
Yeah.
you know, to see this whole, like, again, I don't even like the word EDM. You know, I find it very, like, I know it's electronic dance music, but it's kind of put in its own little genre. And, like, you know, DJs are superstars now. Like, I had Dave Haslam on,
Yeah.
you know, and it was great to get his thoughts on, you know, how he sees it, because, you know, he's done Hacienda, he's done it all as well. What's your thoughts on kind of like this whole new social media, new breed? For everybody's, you know, filming you with a phone nowadays instead of just capturing it in their mind.
Yeah, it is. It's a strange one. It's a double-edged sword, really. I remember with the phone, when I started DJing again in 2003, I remember I was in Liverpool, actually. I was at the Magnet, and I remember one of my early gigs, and I remember somebody coming right close to me with a phone, with taking a picture of me with a phone, just kind of creeping in right close. And I remember thinking that no one would have done that one time. They would have said, "Do you mind if I take a photo?" But now we're in a time where people just do this, and you know, you have to get used to it, you know. So yeah, this is the way that it is. The social media, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to make a comeback without the internet. The internet facilitated, you know, there were lots of DJ forums online at the time, and I joined a few of them, and I was able to kind of chat with people and bring things to people's attention. And that was very much how I was able to kind of reconnect. So on that side, yeah, it has a real positive. But if I look at somebody who's kind of starting out as a DJ now, that it's very difficult, because almost they've got to find some kind of, I wouldn't say gimmick, but something that gives them a social media platform that brings people. It's like the same. It's not just DJs. It's like the record industry. Once upon a time, a band would go in the studio, make a few demos, and somebody would go to London and go around the record companies for a day or two, playing them the demos, and the record companies would hear them, and they'd either like them or not like them. And if they like them, they might say, "Well, look, you know, let's do something with this," and you know, and that was the whole kind of process. Now, a record company wouldn't even probably bother with a band unless they looked on and saw they had a certain amount of followers on social media. Mm-hmm. So the band has to be their own promoters in the first place. They've got to go beyond making the demo even or whatever. And now they've got to like be their own platform for growing that, you know, before the record company has to take the risk. And so to them, the risk isn't anything like as much, because they can look and say, "All right, they got 50,000 followers. This other band, yeah, we like what they're doing as well, but they've only got 6,000 followers. We know which one we're going with." So it's a popularity contest in that sense, you know. And it's hard because, you know, being good at selecting and playing music to an audience and doesn't necessarily equate to being good at having a kind of visual social media presence. It's the same way that, you know, when remix culture started, like and everything, that not all DJs were suited to remixing records or being in a studio. They just weren't suited to that kind of environment. I mean, David Mancuso never mixed any records. I don't think Nicky Siano hardly did anything, you know, like, so there are DJs that just never went in a studio, but were brilliant DJs. But if you put them in a studio away from that kind of live vibe, it's cold, clinical. They keep listening over the same thing over again and again, and it doesn't appeal to them. And that's fair enough, because it's a different kind of tactic. But, you know, DJs had to become remixers, so to speak, to kind of get to the next level and to hopefully, you know, get into the big leagues or whatever. So it's hard. And so it's very difficult now for somebody just starting off to build their platform. That's what they've got to do now. It's not even building their career. They've got to build something online before they can get past, you know, like first base and everything. So it's difficult. I mean, there's always openings. Things change around. There's probably underground scenes that are just mushrooming at the minute we don't know anything about. That's, in 12 months' time, there'll be fruits from those, and there'll be different things. I mean, you know, for God's sake, I'm like in my 60s now. So what do I know about what, you know, teenagers? And historically was the teenagers that always drove these things forward. You know, I was just like, put something online from the like early 80s when I was, it was 84 when I was managing Broken Glass, the breakdancers, and they're all teenagers then. You know, this is how it was. They, you know, they were like the driving force behind the scene. So we're talking from a different kind of perspective, you know, like, I mean, I suppose that I'm fortunate that I cross over between different age groups in terms of the people I can play for. The younger people come to certain gigs, older people can come as well. The music that I play, it manages to, you know, like appeal to different generations of people. It's just great music, you know. It's an easy equation when it's just a great tried and trusted disco or dance track from the past that, you know, has done it, you know, like it will work generally with like a kind of current audience. And so that's been, I mean, that's how, I suppose what I'm termed now as disco, you know, like there didn't used to be a term. I used to kind of say it was groove based. I used to kind of draw from the past and play contemporary bits and bobs that fitted into that. So rather than, you know, 4/4 kind of housey stuff so much, it was more kind of groove based stuff, like from soul funk, disco, jazz funk, you know, electro funk, these kind of areas leading into house and everything. That was the kind of period that I was kind of picking from, you know. And so that music initially, when I came back into it in 2003, it was very underground. There were a lot of underground parties going on, you know, 200 people, 150 people, that kind of thing. Some things a bit bigger, you know, they evolved them more, but it was still very underground. And that out of that all started to change then when the festivals, that disco started to get into the festivals. So it'd be kind of a second room thing in some places, in like clubs and stuff. They had a big house room and they'd have a disco room to the side. But then it started to kind of, I think through the festivals, because it's such, I think in festivals, if you're going to a club, you choose your club night and you pay your money for your club night. So you make a choice. If it's a festival, because you've paid and you can hear all sorts of different things, you're much more likely to try something out that you wouldn't normally. Stick around for half an hour in a space. Yeah. And this is what was happening, that people were kind of, and loving the music because it's, you know, like it's uplifting, kind of positive vibes. And so disco started to infiltrate the fest. So it wasn't just kind of house or techno. Now disco was being played, and so every festival was having a set, and it's become a part of that. It was called, I didn't like it being called disco because it's just like R&B when that came about, calling something by the name of something that had been before. You know what I mean? The R&B to me is like kind of 50s, early 60s, like pre-soul black music, but then it kind of comes along again later and it's still called R&B. So there's a confusion. The same with disco. And you were talking about EDM. In the States, obviously, disco was made into a dirty word. The whole disco sucks kind of movement in the late 70s, Comiskey Park, the record burning frenzy and everything. And that stuck in America because what that was all about was it was rock radio was being replaced by disco. People don't realize how massive it was in the late 70s, because you think kind of late 70s, punk and stuff like punk was sold nothing like disco. I mean, if you go back to the charts in America in like 78, 79, 77, just dominated by disco records at number one. And this was causing the radio stations to change over from a rock format to a disco format, and that put a lot of people's noses out of joint. And one of them was this guy Steve Dahl, who worked in Chicago, and he was a bit of a early shock jock, you know, very outspoken, and he'd do his things on air and then play a disco record and break it on air, and they'd make this big, and eventually they got that Comiskey Park, and it was like this Nazi record burning frenzy, basically. That's it was like going back to the book burnings of, and so it wasn't just disco, it was anything, any black music was thrown in there as well. And it was just this, but it caused, it kind of put, you know, the hex on it, those words, disco sucks. There's a great bit in Nile Rodgers's book where he talks about, because like, this all happened just as Good Times was going up the charts, and Good Times would be Chic's last big hit, which is crazy. They had a number one, they'd had number ones before that, and nothing happened after that. And it was all to do with this kind of the way disco was being viewed within the music business at that time. But he says he was at a Christmas party for WA Warner Brothers Electro Atlantic, because they were signed to Atlantic. And he said, you know, like upstairs, he had a buffet and everything, and people were kind of milling about and chatting and blah, blah, blah. And he thought, you know, oh, we'll go down and see what's happening in the disco. And he went downstairs and disco, and there was no one there. And he was kind of, okay, went back up, you know, waited another half hour. Right, be busy now, we'll go back down. No one there. And he kind of realized that because it said disco there, all these people in the music business who, for the past few years, you know, disco had been like the biggest money spinner for them. They were too cool for school. They didn't want to go into a disco because it'd been, you know, and that's what he could see. And that was the end of like 79. And so disco was almost declared dead and had to go back underground. And it's the greatest period, though, for me, the early 80s, when it had to go back underground again, because there's so much amazing music made. And it wasn't, you know, disco had got into a place where everyone was trying to make a disco record in the late 70s. So, you know, Rod Stewart did this, you know, even Dolly Parton, people like, you know, it was just like a free for all. And it was, you know, it was just making it a bit kind of, you know, just cheesy. It was just like, there was that cheesy aspect coming into it. Whereas when it went back underground, so to speak, these labels like Prelude and West End and Emergency and all this and stuff that I would be playing at Legend and Wigan Pier, it was in the right place again. It wasn't people making disco records wanting to make £1 million. It was people making disco records because they went to a certain club and they wanted to hear that record played in the club. And it was, you know, so when Bambaata's making Planet Rock, he's not thinking this is going to be a globally selling record. He's thinking, I want to play this at my block parties in the Bronx. That's the first thought. He's doing it for these kids. And so it was being done for the right reasons then, whereas it had kind of, you know, gone astray a little bit from there. But there was that disconnect in America. And whereas there wasn't the disc in the UK, this disco sucks thing didn't really affect us at all. Well, not straight on. I mean, there were probably effects from America that we weren't aware of in terms of what was coming on. But there was a little backlash against disco here as well, because Saturday Night Fever, which came out in 77, had been a massive film. And initially, you know, everyone, it was great. It's a film about our culture type thing. But it brought into the clubs a lot of people for the wrong reasons, again. You know, and there were dance classes started off and doing all this, trying to do this stuff. And it was like, you know, it was, again, cheesy. And that's where the kind of more credible side of the scene moved towards jazz funk, moved towards this music that was coming out of America, where jazz musicians were making funk tracks, or funk musicians were, you know, bringing jazz into play into what they were doing. And so that underground kind of was there. Although we were still playing disco tracks, like the more black side of disco, you know, because that's what it always was. Disco originally was soul and funk, largely, you know. I mean, it wasn't a type of music. It was a term for music that was played in clubs and discotheques. And that's what disco was. And it only became a genre on the bounce after that. So it's kind of getting back to it, you know, like there was always great disco, we called them disco funk, and later now they're termed as boogie. You know, they weren't called that at the time. That was the rare groove scene that coined that term, you know, for everything. So we kind of, it was the black side of disco, you know. There was other sides to it by this point as well. And so all that kind of went through a kind of underground aspect. And eventually, with the technology and drum machine samplers, sequencers, you get the electro side of it starting to come through, which is going to have such an impact on what comes after house, techno, hip hop, you know. Mm-hmm. And so that early 80s period that I was involved in at Legend and Wigan Pier, it was all about that change in the music from the jazz funk era now moving into this electro funk era. And then after that, electro funk would kind of birthed the UK hip hop scene and also influenced the house and techno directions that are taking place there.
I could talk to you for hours upon hours, Greg. But we're probably going to leave it there. And like I said, you're welcome back anytime. I've got.
Yeah, well, we'll do another, maybe gear it more the music and talk a little bit of football.
Yeah, because I had all these questions to like ask you, and we'll leave it till next time. But
well, if you wanted to, you know, you've also got the option if you wanted to kind of wait to because we're only doing this audio as well. That if you want to do the next one and amalgamate them together, so pick a, you know, do another day in the next week or so.
Yeah, definitely. But it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and you know, even though you're a United supporter, you've actually been the nicest United supporter that I've ever talked to. Because usually they're giving me the two fingers and they're screaming at me for some reason.
Yeah, but I'm old in the. I've been there. I've seen it go round in the cycles. It will change. It changes back. You know, you've just got to get on with it. And like I said at the start, that we need each other.
Yeah.
You know, if it gets to a situation where Man City win the league every year for the next 10 years, it's devalued. The whole thing's devalued. There'll be more interest then in our matches between us to get second place. You know, it'll kind of, you know, we need each other in terms of, you know, like we're so alike. I mean, I think it's so funny on the football forums that, you know, like on the United forums, they kind of think that Liverpool people they're from a different country or something. They're just not right, you know. And it's the same with and it's like, you know, we're 40 miles distance from each other. Mm-hmm. You know, we're so close in a lot of things. There are differences, of course, but you know, there's more that makes us similar than makes us different. You know, within this, and but that's what it's all about with football. You know, it wouldn't be the same if I started, you know, thinking, oh, you know, I mean, my brother, oh my God, my brother, who went to all these matches and everything. I remember in the 80s and stuff. No, it wasn't. It was 90s when United were doing well, and he gone off United. And I remember him like he went to a few Liverpool. He didn't start supporting Liverpool or anything, but he didn't have that kind of passion anymore. And he was, because he's worked in football. He's been in football all his life. I mean, he started out with playing for Tranmere youth teams and stuff, and had a very good career in the non-leagues, won an FA trophy and stuff, and then managed in the non-leagues and everything. So he was much more kind of pragmatic about looking at it, you know. But the fact that he lost his love in that way, you know, kind of really, really shocked me. I think he didn't like it when United, you know, sort of becoming more corporate and going on the stock exchange and things like that. That just kind of turned him off a little bit from it all. So yeah, you know, I could never do that, you know, and it's like, and the day that, you know, I kind of, you know, the only time I'd ever want Liverpool to win is when it benefited us in some sort of way. You know, it's got to have like a benefit. It's the same with you. There's going to be matches. If you were like going for, you know, for the league and United were playing City, you'd obviously be a United supporter for the match, you know, of course. But, you know, otherwise, it has to be that way, though, doesn't it? You know, we enjoy each other's suffering, and you know, and we kind of suffer for each other's success, and that's the but that's what we feel. We wouldn't feel that if you know, we didn't have that kind of rivalry. So,
we'll leave it there, Greg. Thank you so much for coming on. Please, everyone, like and subscribe, and we'll see you later.
All right, nice one, Daz.